Okay, that's better. Okay, let's start again. So, my name's Steve Woodward. I'm a principal evangelist in a group at Microsoft that is responsible for working with all the major broadcasters on their live video delivery projects. Sunday Night Football has been my project for the last 2 years. So, I have a lot of experience in terms of what it actually takes to deliver a large-scale live event, kind of like the broadcast they do here for the keynote, kind of like the broadcast that you would do internally if you wanted to, take an exec briefing and actually distribute that out to all of your shareholders. Exactly the same as if you wanted to, create some video and share that with the rest of your employees at your company. All of those things fundamentally require the same things. How do you take that video, take that live feed, create either an on-demand feed or stream it live? How do you edit that content? And how do you, share it out with everybody? So how do you stream that content out? So what I'm going to talk about for the next hour and 15 minutes, hopefully a little shorter, I'll leave some time at the end for Q&A, is how we do it, and some of the tools that we've built in order to enable us to actually automate a lot of the process in terms of how we actually create live streams, create on-demand content, store all that information, and share it out with people. So let's go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to talk about, first off, video workflow. What does it look like? What does that end-to-end mechanism of taking live video from a camera and actually displaying it on someone's desktop? And then secondly, I'm going to drill into something called Content Manager. And I'll explain a little bit more about the context for that when we get there. But Content Manager is essentially a framework that we've built that allows us to automate a lot of the processes involved in doing that video delivery process. And I'll explain those as we go through. It allows me to do conversion of VOD files. So I can take VOD files, I can convert them to different formats depending on how I want to stream them. It allows me to manage live events. It allows me to edit the video content, either live content as it's running or on-demand content. And it also allows me to do mid-roll ad insertion. One of the things you've seen, if any of you have watched the Sunday Night Football or like the US Open or Wimbledon or the Vancouver Olympic stuff, a lot of that stuff is ad-sponsored, so we actually insert ads into the middle of it, and I'll explain how we do that. I just do a wrap-up and summary and explain how all that stuff's built. So as I said, I've been project manager at Microsoft for Sunday Night Football for the last 2 years. We've been nominated for 2 sports Emmys. We've lost twice. Boo. But hopefully to better competitors. Yeah, right. So it's been a really fun project to work on. It's incredibly stressful. I mean, when I went to the Emmys this year, which was about 3 weeks ago, one of the presenters was up there and he was accepting his award. And he said, the biggest difference between what we do when we're doing live streaming to what the guys who win Oscars, they can win an Oscar for the 25th take. Yeah, we get 1 take. Everything's done live. If things go wrong, there's no do-overs. Same as my session here today. It's actually the 3rd time I've presented it in the last 4 weeks. But there's really no do-overs. Yeah, I can't stop it and start it and recorrect it. When you start a keynote session, an event like this, the session's going to go on from end to end. If you mess up the video broadcast, streaming it out to everyone on the internet, it's done. There's no do-over. So, from that perspective, there's a lot of things technically that can go wrong, and I'm hoping that some of the things that we've put in place will actually alleviate some of those problems for you as you move forward and give you some ideas around how you can help control these systems. For Sunday Night Football, it's probably one of the most complex broadcasts that we do. And we do other things like the Olympics and Wimbledon. I did March Madness last year. And with all of those, most of them are a single bit rate, or maybe there'll be 2 cameras. For Sunday Night Football, we actually run 5 simultaneous camera feeds, and we allow the user to actually switch between which feeds they're watching, so they get this really nice end-user experience. It has all of the things you'd expect from an online video player. So we have full DVR functionality. You can do slow motion. You can actually have integration with social media, so you can chat with people on the fly. We have Twitter wars each week where the teams compete who can actually send the most tweets out, and all that good stuff. So there's a lot of things that you can wrap into a video player to make it a very compelling end-user experience. Obviously, for the stuff we do, the really high-end stuff, a lot of that is probably overkill for what most of you would need to deal with in the enterprise. But it gives you some pretty good ideas of what the capabilities are of Silverlight that we use for building our clients, and how you can actually wrap video experiences and other experiences in together to make a very compelling end-user experience. The majority of the projects we run, we actually have a separate standalone video player, all built in Silverlight, but it runs completely independently of all the back end that's doing all the video streaming. And what I'm going to show you today is basically how we control all of the back end. So in terms of the video workflow, what does it look like? As I said, we have 5 camera feeds. We actually take the broadcast feed, which is our HD feed, which is the standard feed everyone watches on TV. And then in addition to that, we also have 4 SD feeds. All those feeds get bounced up to a satellite and back down to a bunch of video encoders. In our case, since we're doing broadcast level streams and broadcast level distribution, we actually use dedicated encoding devices. All of the ones we've used up until now come from a company called Inlet. They make a device called a Spinnaker, and we use a lot of them. So we actually have, I think the first year we did it, we probably had 12 Spinnakers involved in the process. Now we only have 6, since they're now capable of doing HD streams on a single box. But the first year we did it, they were only capable of doing a single SD stream on one box. So we basically doubled all our boxes up. Once we've taken all of that content, we feed it into the encoders. And what the encoders do is convert it into a format that we can then distribute. And all of that, from the encoder out to the ingest servers and the origin servers, is all done just as HTTP traffic. So the encoder, what it's doing is it's taking those video feeds, and for each feed, it's actually encoding that video at multiple different bit rates. So we'll encode everything from from 350 kilobits per second all the way up to 3.2 meg. A 3.2 meg video stream is actually a full 720p, 30 frames a second stream. So if you watch that on your big screen on your computer, it looks great. If you actually take the computer and plug it into your 52-inch plasma on the wall, it still looks great. So you can actually take that content, scale it up. There's an awful lot of video quality in what we produce there. Those streams go through to what we call ingest servers and origin servers. The purpose of the ingest server is basically to take that video feed from the encoder and fork it out to 2 separate origins. They run as primary and backup, and that gives us failover when we're actually running live streams. If a hard drive goes down in the primary, the backup will automatically just kick in and we'll start taking content from that. I wouldn't say it's never happened. It has. So we have this dual redundant failover system where the video will actually flow through. We can lose any one point in there, and it'll actually continue to work. From there, the content's pushed out to a CDN so that we can actually distribute out to the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of viewers that we actually get watching these events. Probably overkill for some stuff that you'd be looking at, if you're looking at doing this at an enterprise level. But if you're looking at distributing stuff where you could potentially have upwards of 10,000 users actually connected to the system and actually viewing the live streams at the same time, then you're going to have to find some kind of distribution mechanism. The nice thing about pushing all the content out over HTTP, and I'll talk a bit more about the protocol in a minute, is the CDNs are designed to push HTTP traffic. It's what they do best. When we used to look at doing large broadcasts with Windows Media Video and Windows Media Streaming, the problem there is we needed a large number of dedicated Windows Media servers in order to move all the content out. Now, because everything's just HTTP, the rest of the CDN network just sees it as HTTP requests, and they just replicate the traffic out. In addition to that, if that content gets pulled from Akamai and it gets pulled across Time Warner or Comcast, those guys cache all the content for us as well. So that content gets replicated out very, very efficiently. If that content gets pulled into Microsoft, Microsoft caches it for us as well. So just HTTP requests, they just cache it at the edge. It gets distributed to everyone inside the company very, very efficiently. And then, of course, we have end users. And in our case, everything we've done up until now has been done on Silverlight. So we actually hit all of the Mac and Windows clients. We recently have done some work. I think this past season, they actually streamed through to iPads as well. But they didn't use our technologies to use that. They actually had a separate encoding path, and then they pushed the content to a separate set of origins, and then they streamed everything out to the iPads. What we're looking at in the future is actually the ability to actually merge those paths together. For anyone who's done any work looking in detail about streaming protocols, the protocol we use in order to push our content through is called smooth streaming. Apple actually used a protocol called HLS, HTTP live streaming. Inside those streaming, those packets that's being pushed out, essentially it's just H.264 video, which is chunked down in 2-second blocks for us. And for Apple, they actually chunk everything into 10-second blocks. So what we've done on our side on IIS Media Services is we can actually take those 2-second blocks that we normally create, we can chunk 5 of them together, and then we can throw it out as an HLS packet. And that enables us to have the same encoding and origin infrastructure and allows us to deliver to separate clients on the back end. Okay. Oops. Page up. So when we looked at that and we looked at what the capabilities were, the big things for us, we do everything with adaptive streaming. It gives us the ability to scale up and down in terms of the bit width, the bit rate that's being delivered to the end user client, and allows us to deliver the best experience possible given the user's bandwidth and their screen size and everything else. We looked at what we need to do from a VOD workflow perspective. So for Sunday Night Football, we take a whole bunch of video ads that come in. There may be content that's created to go into the halftime show, and all of that stuff's inserted on the fly and produced ahead of time. So we actually need to take that VOD content and convert that to smooth streaming as well so that we can stream it out. Obviously, there's the live streams, and that's the most important part of what we do. And we need to be able to control that end-to-end workflow for the live streams. On the video editing side, for a lot of the live events we do, we actually want to capture sections of that video and republish them as highlights in very, very short order. So for things like Sunday Night Football, when you're watching the game, if you've ever watched what happens, you'll see there's a highlights window that can come up at the bottom. And the highlights will be maybe a touchdown or field goal or a really long pass that happened. And we can actually cut that off of the live video stream in real time and publish it in under a minute. So we don't actually have to go through the process of splicing the video like we would normally and then re-encoding that segment of video. We actually just produce a separate video file that points to the mark-in, mark-out point in the live content, and then the player is capable of just playing from that mark-in, mark-out point. We have some tools that we give the video editor so they can actually go and do that. Ad insertion, as I said, in case everyone is kind of delusional about this, the only reason we have sports in America, and as you can tell I'm English, most American sports are designed for one purpose and one purpose only, to deliver as many ads as is humanly possible whilst you're sat there distracted with the game. Yeah? That's the only reason it's there. Most other sports, like soccer, we play for 45 minutes, we stop, and then we play for 45 minutes. A little ad break in the middle. Obviously, the ad insertion piece is really important. For most of my customers, like NBC and the other broadcasters I work with, it's very, very important because it's how they monetize their product. It's not like they're just trying to stream video internally within the corporation, or they're trying to broadcast out a message about new training video or those kind of things. They're there to make money off of the franchises that they've paid for, and the way they do that is through advertising. And then finally, just pushing all that content out, pushing the live and the on-demand content out, so that these separate standalone video players that we create can actually take that content and distribute it and display it in a timely fashion to the end users. Okay, so how do we actually get the content out there? So this is basically how adaptive streaming works. We take a live video feed in, it goes into an encoder, and then every 2 seconds, that encoder is going to create a video chunk at normally 5 or 6 or 7 different bit rates. So in this case, we'll generate bit rates all the way from 300K up to 2.4 meg. And each of those is, every 2 seconds, we'll generate a new packet, new packet, new packet, new packet every 2 seconds. Now, each of those packets at the different bit rates is what's called picture aligned or GOP aligned. And what that means is, GOP is just group of pictures. So each of those 2-second chunks is perfectly aligned with the 2 seconds below it. What that means is we can actually switch between the bit rates dynamically as we go along, but the video plays back continuously. So here's what happens on the client. Client has what's called bitrate heuristics, and that basically is what enables it to determine which of the bit rates it actually wants to pull down and use. So it'll go ahead and it'll try and start as quickly as possible. The reason there is, if you go to something like YouTube or one of the other video sources where they're doing progressive download, you have to wait until there's enough video in the buffer before you actually start playing back to the end user. So what we do is we start at the lowest bit rate, which is normally either 300 or 350 kilobits per second stream. And we'll grab that first video chunk. It's pretty small, comes down pretty quickly, and it means we can start playing video back very, very quickly. And we've got 2 seconds to play that back. Okay? We also know how long it took to actually get down to the client. So that chunk gets downloaded to the client, and say that 300 kilobits per second chunk only took me 300 milliseconds to get down. Well, I know I've got way more overhead in terms of network bandwidth, so I can actually step up to one of the higher bit rates. So I'm going to step up to the 700 kilobit stream, and I'm going to go ahead and pull down the next video chunk. And that process just gets repeated. Every time I can see that I can actually download that next segment of video fast enough, I'll just pull it down and start playing it. So I'm now at the 2.4 meg. Okay, now my kid who's upstairs playing on Xbox goes and starts playing a bunch of games with his buddies, and my network starts to degrade. At that point, we detect it. It's taken us longer than 2 seconds to download a video chunk. So we're going to have to step down. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to continue that continuous playback. So if you watch the kind of things we do with smooth streaming relative to like progressive download, you'll see, A, first, it starts much faster. B, there's hardly any buffering. We do get it occasionally because we're not completely impervious to network outages and things like that. But for the most part, we can actually just gracefully downgrade the user experience by going to a lower bit rate, but we continue the playback, which is obviously really important when you're trying to watch a sports game. And we're just going to go ahead and do that. The other nice thing about this, all those video chunks that got pulled down, they got cached everywhere they went because they were just HTTP requests. So anyone else who comes in, either my neighbor who happens to be sitting in the back of the room, or anyone else, if you've got 4 or 5 of you in an office building, anyone else who's requesting those chunks, they're just going to get cached the same as all the other IIS traffic, all the other HTTP traffic does in your organization. So that content just gets cached locally, and if he goes and requests the same video stream, instead of going all the way back to the CDN, it's actually just going to grab it from a local cache. So it's a much more efficient way of distributing the traffic. Obviously, it keeps CDN costs down a little as well. Okay, so in terms of how we actually deliver all of that content, we've, over the last 2 months, basically decided that we've had all these technologies for the last 2 years. We've had IIS media services, we've had Expression Encoder, we've had Silverlight for doing the players, but we never really formalized that these things were actually related. And as a consequence, it was really hard to find information on everything. If you wanted to find out about Silverlight Media, you went to the Silverlight Media site. If you wanted to find out about IIS media services, you went to the IIS site. So what we're trying to do is basically formalize that. And as one of my marketing guys says, we're now calling it Microsoft Media Platform with a capital M and a capital P. But basically, it's just an umbrella over a bunch of technologies that allows us to talk to them together, set up a website on Microsoft.com that actually has all the information together and allows us to start aggregating around this base level of functionality that we've been delivering for the last couple of years and talk about it more consistently. So in terms of the services, IIS Media Services, this is a feature that's built on top of IIS 7 that allows us to do all the video streaming. It basically understands what goes into one of those smooth streaming video files, and it allows us to serve the content out intelligently. Windows Azure was announced, about 4 weeks ago, that the Windows Azure guys have actually taken the IIS Media Services stuff, and they are actually rolling that out as a separate service that you can buy into. So you can actually, instead of actually setting up IIS Media Services yourselves, you can actually have that as a hosted service up in the cloud, and the Azure guys are looking at doing that. They will have a customer technology preview towards the end of this month, so look out for that on the Windows Azure site, and then you'll actually be able to use them to do streaming. Initially, they're only doing on-demand streaming. Doing live is actually a lot more complicated. As I explained, things go wrong very quickly if you don't get it right, so we're actually taking our time. We're just rolling out on-demand streaming for now, and we'll be looking at obviously doing live at some point in the future. Okay, in terms of the tooling, Expression Encoder was our replacement for Windows Encoder, Media Encoder 9, which is now being completely deprecated, and you can no longer get hold of it. But Expression Encoder has really nice graphical user interface for actually going in, setting up live events, or taking on-demand content and turning that content into another format so that you could actually stream it out. For the purposes of what I'm showing today, Expression Encoder also has a pretty extensive SDK. And the work that we've been doing over the last 9 months is to actually build a set of web services on top of that so we can actually remote into an Expression Encoder box and actually control everything on that box remotely. And it's part of what I'll talk about within the context of Content Manager. Microsoft Play Ready is our DRM solution. Most of the big projects that I work on right now don't use DRM because trying to do DRM for live events is really challenging. Main reason there is, 85% of our users come in the first 15 to 20 seconds, and to build out enough infrastructure in order to be able to deal with that and then have nothing for the rest of the game would be a little silly. So, we make our stuff, royalty-free. Everyone can get hold of it. It's not really royalty-free, but, ad-sponsored and those kind of things. But the content itself isn't actually DRM'd. In terms of the clients, Silverlight is obviously the primary client for us in terms of delivering the content. And all of the players that we've built right now are built around Silverlight. We're also looking at doing some work in the very near future around HTML5. I'm sure a lot of you have seen all of the work and all the conversations we've been having around IE9, the fact that there's an HTML tag in there right now, and we want to be able to deliver some really cool video experiences associated with that. In terms of where it is right now, it's nowhere near what we can already do with smooth streaming. So there's no adaptive streaming, there's no DRM. There's a lot of functionality that's not even in the specs or discussed yet within HTML5 video standards that we fundamentally rely on in order to do some of these large projects that we work on, and to do some of the smooth streaming and those kind of things. And finally, in terms of the clients, the other things that I want to talk about very quickly are over on the far right-hand side. So we've just developed a couple of smooth streaming porting kits, and also there's a couple of play-ready porting kits. So we have a smooth streaming porting kit for iOS. What does that mean? It means, is anyone in here a Comcast customer? There's a couple. Okay. Keep your hand up if you also have an iPad. Okay, there's a few. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, Xfinity's on-demand app that if you go to the web and you actually want to watch, you want to catch up on some episodes and check out what was going on. The Xfinity app is actually a Silverlight app, and it's using smooth streaming on the back end to deliver the content. There's also an iPad app, which, if you look at it, looks exactly like any other iPad app. And probably your natural expectation would be that that app is using HLS to stream the video down. It's not. It's actually using the smooth streaming porting kit. And what that enables them to do is actually create just one set of smooth streaming files and actually stream it out to the PC and Mac on the Silverlight client, and then stream the same content to the iPad using the smooth streaming porting kit. And that's available for licensing. If people are interested in it, particular technology, I can give you the email address to ping the guys for that at the end of the session. Come talk to me. We're also doing the same for Android and for Linux. So we're actually looking at creating those smooth streaming porting kits. Even though we won't push a full version of Silverlight down there, you will actually still be able to create clients and have the smooth streaming experience on those devices as well. Can we hold questions to the end? Hopefully I'll cover it. If not, by all means, stand up and come ask me. And finally, down at the very bottom, frameworks. So one of the things that my group does, apart from the large video delivery projects, is we actually take a lot of the learnings and a lot of the functionality that we produce for these large-scale projects, and we turn these things into frameworks and then release them out, either through Coplex or MSDN Download or the Microsoft Download Center. And those 4 listed across there at the bottom are 4. 3 of them are released. The other one's coming soon, the one on the far right. So the video editor, for those of you who've heard it called the Silverlight Rough Cut Editor, it got renamed. So it's now the Microsoft Media Platform Video Editor. It's still the Rough Cut Editor as far as I'm concerned, because I've called it that for 2 years. So it's just being rebranded, but that's out there. And that allows us to take smooth streaming video content and actually edit it, splice it back together, and create composite video content based on those original assets. Content Manager. I'm not going to talk about that one, because we're going to go through that in just a few minutes. Microsoft Media Platform Player Framework. This was originally called the Silverlight Media Framework, or SMURF, to those of us in the know. So that is now called the Microsoft Media Platform Player Framework, which just rolls off the tongue. I just love my marketing team so much. And the Player Framework is basically the distillation of all the work we did around player creation for both Sunday Night Football in the first year and the Olympics. And we took all of that code and we said, hey, there's a bunch of stuff we've done here in terms of, how do you lay out markers on a timeline? How do you do companion ads? How do you integrate analytics into a player so you can actually monitor what's going on for the end user experience and all that good stuff? And we basically took all of that, we bundled it into this thing we now call the Player Framework, and we released that. And I think they're currently at version 2.5, which is either just being released or is about to be released within the next couple of weeks. And it includes new things like 3D support for anaglyph and active shutter if you're using the NVIDIA graphics cards. And it includes things like Vast, Mast, and VPaid if you're really interested in the advertising space. So those kind of things are new features that are being built into the latest version. And we'll continue to develop those. The last one on the far right, which is one that hasn't been released yet, is one that we've started using for a lot of the big projects we do, which is called Audience Insight. Audience Insight allows us to actually have analytics collected from all the players that are out there distributed on everyone's desktops and actually monitor what's going on for a large live event. So you can imagine with 100,000 users going at the same time, there's a huge amount of data coming back in terms of whether or not anyone's seeing any buffering, whether or not which bit rates they're actually connecting to. We actually used it, for any of you who watched the live video streams we did for the Professional Developers Conference in October, we could actually monitor down to, we knew what countries everyone was viewing in, we knew what languages they were watching, we knew what bit rates they were downloading based on their geo, and we can basically slice and dice all of that information in fairly close to real time. We're about 30 seconds behind live. As you can imagine, there's a huge amount of data coming in very, very quickly. So we've built out this solution called Audience Insight. And again, we'll have a customer technology preview on that probably, we're now May, so probably I'm guessing like in the June, July timeframe, where if you're trying to do like large-scale live video projects, then you can actually take a look at Audience Insight and use that to actually monitor what's going on for those events. Okay, Content Manager. So as I said, the main aim around Content Manager was to basically automate some of this end-to-end process in terms of how you manage these live events, how you actually create the video, and we're going to quickly dive into this and take a look. So there's 5 server roles that I have set up in order to be able to do all of my end-to-end live streaming. I use SharePoint 2010 for all of my content management, not the content itself. So for those of you who looked at the media capabilities inside SharePoint, and yes, you can go and put a video file inside of SharePoint. That's great. Doesn't work real well for some of my video files. Some of my video files are 4 hours long. They're encoded up to 3.5 meg, and we run about 6 to 7 gig an hour. So they're a little big to be put in a database. So I use SharePoint for storing all the metadata associated with my video files. I don't use SharePoint for storing the files themselves. I store the files off on a separate media server. And that's the best place for them as far as I'm concerned for the size of content I produce and the volume of content I produce. Obviously, I use SQL Server 2008. That's my database for SQL. And then 2 other components. IIS Media Services. IIS Media Services Transfer Manager. Transfer Manager is a new feature that was released in alpha last year, I think probably about October, and the beta version of that was actually released last Monday. And what Transfer Manager allows us to do is actually serialize or batch jobs that we want to perform on a video file so that we can actually have a usable video file at the end. So if we want to take an AVI file or an MPEG, we want to produce smooth streaming output, Transfer Manager will actually allow me to automate the process of doing that. So it works in conjunction with Expression Encoder, and I can basically set up a drop folder or watch folder where I drop a video asset into a folder, and Transfer Manager will automatically see that, re-encode it to the new format I want, and then perform any other tasks I want done on it. So if I want to DRM it, I want to watermark it, I want to send it off to a transcription service so that they can go and produce the text file associated with that so that I can then have all that content searchable after the fact, then Transfer Manager will actually take care of the serialization of that. The new features that they put into the version they just dropped out, they actually did some work with the HPC team. And now Transfer Manager has the capability of working as like a head-end server for managing multiple Transfer Manager clients. And what that means is I can actually take a huge library of content. So maybe I've got 20,000 WMV files that currently exist in my organization, and I want to turn those into smooth streaming content. I can actually set up Transfer Manager with a bunch of HPC clusters, and I can drop all that content in there. It'll basically farm it out to all the encoders, and at the end of the day, I'll end up with 20,000 smooth streaming files. So nice feature that they've just added in there. IIS Media Services Origins. These are basically the servers that we're going to use either to take the live content and host that content so that we can stream it out as HTTP traffic, or we're going to take on-demand content that we've created, and then we're just going to drop that onto an IIS origin and allow it to stream that content out exactly the same. And finally, Expression Encoder. And I use Expression Encoder for both the live and the on-demand pieces. So I'm using Expression Encoder to do both my live streaming and to actually work in conjunction with Transfer Manager to encode the VOD content that I want to move to smooth streaming. Now, I have a confession to make. I'm not sure my live demo is going to work. It worked perfectly fine in New York last week when I did it. Shipped the machine from New York to here. Now the demo doesn't want to work. Not quite sure why, but the demo gods are not in my favor today. So when we get there, we'll see if it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm sorry. Shoot me. Don't shoot me. OK, so Content Manager itself. I will be shipping this up onto the download service, the Microsoft.com download service, as soon as I get back to Redmond. We actually finished working on it last Thursday. We were hoping to get it up on the site, but we got kind of tied up some stuff on Friday, and we didn't get it up there. And I've been here all day, so I haven't done it yet. But it's finished. It's packaged up. It's ready to go. And Content Manager is basically this framework that we've built. It's 50,000 lines of code. We're also shipping all the binaries, so you can just take the binaries and use the binaries. If you want to go delve into the code, pull it apart, rebuild it, make it do something different, that's your prerogative. I'm giving the code away for free. You guys have fun with it. So basically, when you take Content Manager and you go to install it the first time, you basically bring it up, bring the install wizard up on the SharePoint box, and you basically, it'll walk you through this wizard and ask you what you want to do. Do you want to do advertising? If you don't want to do advertising, we won't install those bits. Do you want to be able to edit content? If you don't want to edit content, we won't install, what do we call it, video editor, rough cut editor. So we won't do that. If you don't want to re-encode VOD content, we won't install the stuff for Transfer Manager. So you basically tell it, these are all the things I want to do. And then what it'll do is it'll make custom install packages to go on all the different servers that you're actually going to configure. You can run all of this on a single box. Right? I wouldn't recommend it. Segmenting off things like encoding from a SharePoint box is a really good thing to do, because when you're encoding, not much else goes on that box. So just segmenting it up. I mean, and I'll show you what my box looks like at the end. This is my box. For those of you on that side of the room can't see it, this is my desktop box here. It's a very large desktop box. Actually, it's a 6 dual-core Xeon box, so it's 12 CPUs, 24 gig of RAM, 4 terabytes of hard drive. So I've actually got 4 VHDs running on there, but I have segmented it so that when I'm doing encoding, it's not affecting the SharePoint server. When I'm doing live broadcast, it's not actually affecting any of the other boxes, any of the other servers as well. So segment the stuff out, move the stuff on different boxes. So when you go through the install wizard, it'll actually go through, create those install packages. You just go and drop those packages on the other boxes and install them. And what that will do is, if you've followed all the prereqs and you've installed Transfer Manager and the IIS stuff and the expression encoder, it'll go and automatically set up all the web services that you need in order to make all the calls between the various boxes in order to control everything. So in terms of the SharePoint side, it's going to go ahead and install a whole bunch of new stuff into SharePoint. Site templates, they're basically just video projects as far as I see them. So from my perspective, in the work I do with broadcasters, they segment projects depending on what the event is. So it could be Wimbledon, it could be US Open, it could be an NHL hockey game. And we consider those as separate projects. Each of those projects has different owners. So we just take advantage of the built-in authentication authorization within SharePoint in order to allow you to go and create a new site for that project and then specify who the owners are. You're just using all the built-in functionality that's in SharePoint that allow you to segment that content. Who are you going to get to do the video approval once you've actually created some content? When you've allocated live video resources, again, you need to be able to segment that on a per-project basis. So we just break it down. We create a site for each project. And that project allows us to manage the project owners, the project profiles. So am I just going to do live streaming? Am I going to do HD live streaming? Do I want to push stuff to HLS? So you basically define those at the project level. And when you define what you're actually going to push through to at the project level, it'll actually control that across both the live and the on-demand processes. So if I say I want to stream 720p smooth streaming, and I also want to do HLS, when it goes to create VOD content, and I give it an AVI, it's going to create both a smooth streaming 720 version and an HLS version. When I do a live event, it's actually going to configure the IIS media server to do both the live stream over smooth streaming and to also do a transmux of that content on the fly in order to stream it through HLS. It just takes care of all of that for me. I tell it which encoding resources I'm going to use. Encoding resources are normally dedicated pieces of equipment. In my case, I'm using expression encoders because I'm cheap. I don't want to buy a $20,000 broadcast encoder. They're a little less than that now, but they're about $15,000 to $20,000. So I want to keep the price down. In my case, I'm just messing around with this stuff in my office when I'm doing demos. So I just use an HDMI capture card, And I'm actually today using a webcam because my HDMI capture card's not working either. So as I said, the gremlins are there and they're not helping me today. So the encoding resources, those are dedicated resources that you need to be able to define, and you need to be able to split those across the projects. If you've got 4 rooms set up and you've got encoders in each of those rooms that you're doing a live broadcast from, you need to be able to specify who and when can access them. Otherwise you end up with collisions and people trying to use stuff at the wrong time. The IIS media origins, again, all just set up on here, but you actually specify where they are. You specify where the live and the on-demand origins are within the project, and then it allows it to distribute the content to the correct place for those projects. And finally, the FTP servers. As I said, most of the projects we deal with, we actually have a separate standalone video player. The only communication we have from the back end is actually through an XML document that we push to the player. And the only way we do that is we just drop that content off to an FTP server, and it automatically gets replicated out through the CDN so that the player knows these are the video assets I can get hold of, these are the live events, here's the on-demand events, here's the status of the live event, it's just gone live, he's broadcasting right now, and therefore can make that information available to the end user so they can actually start watching live streams, or they can see that new on-demand content has come up. Okay, let's go take a look. So, standard SharePoint, nothing else. Okay, so within SharePoint, basically it's installed a whole bunch of new site templates. Those site templates allow me to define what we call it was originally called LCMS. If you download the stuff next week, you'll see it's all been renamed. It was originally called the Lightweight Content Management Server. And by the time we finished, we decided that there was really nothing lightweight about it. So then they went and renamed everything, so it's now called the Microsoft Media Platform Content Manager. So you'll see everything's renamed. All the namespace has been renamed. It's just that my demos all built on the last version since we only finished this version last week. So let's go and take a look at 2. Well, if you want, when we go through the installation process, we'll actually install 2 sample sites for you so you can go look at them, so you get an idea of what kind of content we can actually store and how we look at it. So this is just a sample conference site, and as I said, we actually used this to back-end everything that we did for the Professional Developers Conference last year. So we actually managed the lists of all of the sessions, the breakout sessions that were being run. And you can see for each of these sessions, there's a whole bunch of information that I'm storing here in terms of what that session is about. I have a feeling this one doesn't play. Let me grab one of the others. Let's grab one on Azure. So the first thing you see here is I have a preview window at the top. And the preview window is basically that, what was called the Silverlight Media Framework player. So we've taken that, we've wrapped it, and we've turned it into a web part. So now we can just embed that inside of SharePoint. So that allows us to actually see the smooth streaming content from within inside of SharePoint. So from an operator perspective, I want to go in and check video quality on something, or I want to make sure that something's up and running. I need a player inside the tool that I'm using to control the process. So the first thing we did was actually build that as a web part. And we can just throw that anywhere we want now as a standard web part. If we want to go and design some custom pages, I can just embed that anywhere I want. The second thing we do is we store a huge amount of information about each of those assets. So this was originally a live asset. It was a live broadcast that we did. Its current state is a VOD asset. So it's a live event that's finished. We've now turned it to a VOD asset. We store things like the title and description, who the author was, so who the presenter was for the session. We store information about, moving down here, if there's a short link to it, if there's Twitter tags, all of that kind of stuff just gets stored in there. And then finally at the bottom you'll see there's actually documents related to this as well. So in most cases, like Microsoft events like this, we actually release all PowerPoint slides as well. I actually store the PowerPoint slides in SharePoint. Makes sense, because that's what SharePoint's good at. So I store all of those in there, and I can just push all of those off to an FTP server if I need to, so that they can get distributed out through the CDN, so I don't have to worry about replicating them out. But again, I'm just storing that. And all of my video assets in here, it's just a SharePoint list. That's all it is. Okay, so that's basically, at the high level, what we're storing inside of SharePoint. Let's jump back over to the slides. This video switch is going to work. So, as I said, we store a whole bunch of metadata associated with the video assets. And we have 3 different types of video assets that we store. File asset, which is actually just an on-demand asset. a rough cut edit asset, which is an asset that we've created on the fly and we've edited, and it's a composite of some of the other video assets. And then finally, a live asset. And the live assets have to have a lot more information associated with them because you need to know when you're going to run a live event, which encoder you're actually going to get that live stream from so that we can go ahead and start it up. You need to know durations and start time so that you can actually manage those resources, those encoding resources for the live events when they're up. And for those with very sharp eyes, we'll also notice at the very bottom there, we also store some information about multicast. IIS Media Services today doesn't support multicast. It will in the future. I'm not sure at what point, but at some point during the project cycle, we actually got hold of an alpha version that supported it, and we had an internal group at Microsoft that needed it. So we've just built the functionality straight in so that when we get there, it's already built in. Okay. So how do we create video on demand? As I said, we use Transfer Manager, and Transfer Manager allows us to manage these drop folders whereby we can drop a video asset into a folder and it'll automatically just kick off the process of encoding it. Once we've created that asset, we'll populate it into SharePoint. And once it's in SharePoint, then an operator can actually get in, look at that content, QA it, and approve it. Now, all of our approval processes are basically just SharePoint workflows. So we just use the standard workflows that are built into SharePoint. We've customized them in order to meet our needs, but we're basically just using workflows inside of SharePoint. And then once we've finished, we can actually just push that content out. So I said Transfer Manager, beta version shipped Monday last week. It allows us to do this batch encode of either video or just simply audio files. It allows us to do things like transmux to other formats. So if we take some smooth streaming content and we drop that in, we can simply just transmux that to HLS. So without doing any re-encoding, it's a much, much faster process to transmux something than it is to re-encode it. It allows us to do task chaining. So as I said, if we want to take that video asset, drop it in there, have it encoded, and then we want to DRM it and watermark it. In our case, we also, the last task we do there is we actually take the content and we move it from the Transfer Manager box off to an IIS box that's actually going to stream the content out. And then the last thing we do is actually call in through web services and SharePoint in order to tell SharePoint that there's a new video asset, which is now available to be published, approved and published. And I said, finally, they're supporting HPC. So let's go take a look at that. So, where am I? That box. Okay. The scaling on the windows is kind of throwing me because they're not quite aligned. Okay. So this is basically the top level of Transfer Manager, and you can see there. Right now, I have nothing running, I have nothing queued. I have 24 jobs which have actually gone ahead and finished, and none that failed, which is kind of unusual because it is an alpha version. Well, it's now in beta, but my alpha version used to fail pretty regularly. Job Monitor will actually just give me a progress report of what's going on and what video files are being encoded. And then job templates, I can actually set up job templates to actually do a whole bunch of different things. And I can specify which job templates are associated with which drop folders. So I can have multiple different encode processes. I just define different jobs for them. They each get their own watch folder, and when I drop the content in there, it'll automatically go through the process of doing whatever I've asked it to do for that conversion. And then finally, I get to specify what the watch folders are. And you can see here, down here at the bottom, these are the watch folders associated with Content Manager. So let's go and take a look at that. Let's go and bring up this one and this one. Okay, so these are the watch folders I've got associated with Content Manager. And the three interesting ones in the middle. File import is where I drop VOD content when I want it transcoded and imported into SharePoint. Hosting is basically what I do when I have a live event and I finish with a live event. I need to go through a translation process from that live event just to re-import the information and change the status of that within SharePoint. So I basically just drop the content up here, and it does that process for me and re-imports the information into SharePoint. And then finally, for rough cut edit, it does exactly the same. Once I've created new rough cut content, it'll actually go through the process of importing that into SharePoint exactly the same way. So file import, if we go ahead and take a couple of these videos, let's take 4 small ones. Ooh. Copy those. drop them in here. Don't know why there's some in there right now. Let's see what happens. Okay. We go back across here, and you can see that it's updated, and it now knows that it's got jobs in the queue, and it's basically going to take those, queue them up, and it's going to run through the process of encoding that content, which were just WMV files. It's going to convert them to smooth streaming files, and then it's going to move them to the smooth streaming origin, and then import that, all the metadata associated with that into SharePoint for me. If I want to look a bit more detail about what's actually going on, I can see that for this particular job, there's actually 2 tasks that are going to be performed. It's going through the encoding process right now, and I can see current status of it. If we go with the new version that they've shipped, you can actually see all of the information about all of the client HPC servers that are running Transfer Manager, so you can actually see how the jobs have actually been distributed across all the boxes. So you get a lot more information about what's actually going on there in the cluster in order to actually go do that encoding. So once I've gone ahead and done that, if I go back up, that content's actually being replicated into a separate site. So if I go ahead, jump back over to my other site, to the other project. So as that content's being produced, it's not found its way there yet. It will shortly. As that content's being encoded and pushed across to the origin, eventually it'll actually call back to the other web services. And those web services will actually populate that information into SharePoint. And at that point, I will actually see in here, manage new assets. It'll also actually send me a message to tell me that there's new content that's arrived, so that I can then go in and actually, go and check on that, say, okay, this content looks fine, and I can go ahead and go through an approval process before that content gets pushed out publicly so that other people can go and take a look at it. Okay. So this basically just walks through exactly what I just talked about. Content gets dropped into a watch folder. We actually spin up an expression encoder task, go and do an encode on it. We then move the content off to an IIS origin. And then finally, we'll actually go through the process of calling in through the web services in order to take all of the metadata associated with that content and populate it into SharePoint. OK, so live. So has anyone here actually done live smooth streaming with IIS Media Services? Couple. OK. So if you want to go and do live today, it's a fairly complex task. In order to do live, you're basically going to have to go and set up an encoder, either expression encoder or an inlet device. And you're going to have to give it all the encoding profiles in order to tell it what bit rates to use and what output format you want. The next thing you do is you go and get an IIS media server. And on that, you create what's called a publishing point. And the publishing point is basically just a web service that allows us to send all of the video content from the encoder to the IIS media server. And the IIS media server is then going to grab the video chunks as they're received, and it's going to push those into a fragmented MP4 file that stores in memory. And then when a client connects to it, it can actually stream all that content out. So you actually have to, there's like several steps in the process of doing that. So what we wanted to do is make it fairly easy to actually automate that process end to end. So we've built a set of web services that control the publishing points, and we're releasing those. You can actually take those independently of what we've done, and you can actually deploy those on top of an IIS media server and actually use it to control that IIS media server remotely. And that allows you to go in and create publishing points, edit publishing points, delete publishing points, start and stop publishing points because they have state, and do all of that remotely. So we've built all of those, and we're shipping those out. The other thing we did was we actually took the expression encoder SDK, and we built a set of web services on top of that so that we can control those. And then finally, we actually took the web services that Inlet provide in order to automate the control of their boxes remotely, and we also integrated those into Content Manager. So what that means is we can actually manage the end-to-end process where we can actually go create a publishing point. We can go and send the information to the encoder to tell it what encoding profile it should have and point it to the right publishing point, and then we can go and start the whole process, and hopefully video will flow. As I said, this probably won't likely run the first time. Go back up. So as I said, all of my assets that I create are all just entries, metadata entries in a list. And so all of my on-demand content is here. There's a couple of ads in here. And then this is content that actually got produced earlier. So if we go down to the bottom, okay, no live events in there right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new live event. So I'm just going to go and add a new item. And you can see how I could just add an on-demand asset, and then I could just point it to an on-demand asset that I have up on my origin. I can create a live asset, or I can create a rough cut edit asset. So I'm just going to go and create a live asset. And I'm going to give it a title. Dev 330. And then I need to tell it which encoders it's going to use. So for most purposes, we have multiple encoders set up, and you actually need to get this project to point to the right encoder, to start that encoder with the appropriate feed fed to it in order to get the content pushed out. Let's go give it a short description, because it makes it easier for me to see. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of other content I could add in here as I'm going through. I'm going to say it's 60 minutes long, and we're going to go ahead and start it about, scroll down. Let's go ahead and start at 5 p.m. Okay. So if I scroll all the way down to the bottom here, you'll see I have a new asset, and it's currently over here on the right-hand side. It's in pending state. So right now, no one can go in and actually start this event until someone's approved that that encoding asset and this live broadcast needs to happen at that time. So I'm just going to go ahead and approve this one. As I said, we're just using standard SharePoint workflows. And then when I scroll back down, hopefully this one's now approved. So that one's approved. So some of the bigger pieces of work we've done. So this is actually all Silverlight controls. And this is what allows us to manage the live events. So I've just gone ahead and created this new live event up here. And if I click on that, you'll see it actually pulls down on the left-hand side and tells me that, which event it is. Now, if I've got multiple encoders and multiple sessions going on, then what I see across this bar across the top, this grid layout, is I will see that I've got 4 encoders. Maybe I've got 4 different breakout rooms, and I've got breakout sessions going on in all of them. And maybe I've got a keynote from 8:30 until 10, and then I have a break, and then I have a series of breakout sessions, and then I have lunch, and I have a series of breakout sessions. So I'd actually get to see 4 bars across the top, and then I get to see each of my sessions. So it gives me a view of, from an ops perspective, it gives me a view of what events it is I'm trying to manage today. So I go ahead and click on that. I've now taken control of that live event. And you can see down here on the left-hand side, we actually have a series of buttons. I'm going to go ahead and click Start. I'm not very hopeful anything's going to happen, but I'm going to do it anyway. So at that point, what's happened? I've clicked on Start. It's gone out. It's created the publishing point on the IIS Media Services server, and it's given that a GUID. And if I scroll over to the right-hand side, I can actually see what the GUID is associated with that publishing point. And we do that just so that when we create them unique every single time. It's then reached out to Expression Encoder, and it's reached out through the web services to Expression Encoder, which is running on a separate logical box. And it's asked it to start the encoder with a specific profile. In this case, I'm just running smooth streaming 480p, and it's told it which publishing point it needs to push the content to. So it's not going to do it, but I will go ahead, and if we go ahead and look, we go ahead and look on the IIS server, you can see that publishing point is there, and it's currently in a starting state. Now, the thing that's broken right now, and the problem I'm having, is my web service calls going through to Expression Encoder aren't completing, and I don't know why. I spent a couple of hours looking at it today, can't get my head around it, need to talk to the Expression Encoder team and figure out what I've done wrong. But what would normally happen is the web services would tell Expression Encoder to start. It would, because the publishing point is in a starting state, it's basically just sitting there waiting for video chunks to be sent to it. When Expression Encoder starts, it starts creating those 2-second video chunks, and it'll start pushing them across to the publishing point. When the publishing point gets its first video chunks, it'll actually switch over to a started state, and at that point, it'll start creating the live video file. And that file can then get streamed out from the IIS origin. Because the web services aren't completing, obviously it's not getting video chunks, so it's not actually switching through to that other state. So let's go ahead and jump back. So in terms of what we built, we have a set of web services that basically sit below SharePoint that allow us to send those requests through. we send web services requests through to the IIS media services, this live streaming server over on the left-hand side. And we tell it to create the publishing point. And then we'll send the request out to whichever encoder group it is that we actually want that video to start on. And at that point, the video will actually come up and start playing. Kind of frustrating it doesn't work today. The content from my session in New York was actually recorded as well, and they're gonna put that up on the IIS Media Services website. So that will be up there, so you can trust me, it does work sometimes. Just not today. Okay, so in terms of how we actually manage those live events, when I go ahead and click start on there, it's actually going to go through the process of starting the publishing points and the encoders. That's not when the event goes live for the public to watch. When we're doing Sunday Night Football, or when we did PDC, there's a period of time where you actually just want to make sure that everything's up and running for a live event. It's normally about 30 minutes before the show goes live, because that way if things go wrong, you've still got 30 minutes to scramble around and try and correct things. So we normally start our broadcast about 30 minutes before the event goes live. And you saw the other buttons on there. It said start, on air, off air, and stop. So what happens when we hit on air? So we hit start, we'll automatically go to the point where we can go on air. And when we're ready for a presenter to actually walk on stage and start talking about his presentation, we'll hit the on air button. And all that does is make a change to an XML document. That XML document gets replicated out to our standalone player. And the standalone player will say, OK, there's a new live event, and it's ready to broadcast to the end user. So maybe there's a graphical change. I think in our case, we kind of had like a calendar grid. And as soon as those live events were ready, they actually came with a big play button on them. You click on that, the video started playing. And it connected through to the appropriate publishing point, and content was flowing. We do exactly the same at the end of that process. When the speaker's finished, he's finished his last question, we hit the off-air button. And all that is for us is a marker that that content is really no longer live. And at some point, a little while after he's gone off stage, we'll actually shut everything down. And when we shut everything down, we'll reverse the process. So we'll go tell the encoder to stop. We'll then tell the publishing point that it needs to shut down. And there's one delightful little feature that we need to take care of at that point. When, in their infinite wisdom, the IIS Media Services guys started looking at how they made sure that you didn't overwrite your video files, when you're doing live broadcasts off publishing point, it'll actually timestamp the directory name that the content gets created in. Now, that's probably not too much of a problem if you're only running a single IIS origin. Now, in all my cases, I run two. Those timestamps are millisecond aligned on the machine's clock. So I end up with two completely separate directories on different machines with the same content in it, which isn't good for like failover and things. So I actually have to, once I've created the VOD content, I then have to move that content to a well-known directory so that I can find it again. And that's the URL that I publish for the VOD content. So we take care of that as well. So when we finish the live event, we'll just go ahead and move the content to a well-known directory and then republish that so that it can be found more easily. So video editor, the thing formerly known as the rough cut editor. This allows us to create these like live clips or composite clips based on multiple assets. Those clips, all we're doing really at publishing at the end of the day, so smooth streaming video files, they have this thing called the manifest. And the manifest basically is an XML document that describes all of the video chunks inside that video asset. So it just points to all of those. Points to the video chunks and all the audio chunks. And what we do with the rough cut editor is actually create what we call a composite manifest. And all it does is point to a number of different manifest files, but it also references in down to the frame level within those video files in terms of what needs to be played. So it might say, okay, you need to play from a minute and 15 in this file to a minute and 20 in this file. And then from this video asset over here, I want you to play from 2 minutes 34 to 4 minutes 35. And what will happen on the player when it sees this composite manifest is that it'll actually just grab those 2-second video chunks and it'll start playing from the frame level of where it was told to play, and it'll play back that section. When it gets to the end of that, it will have automatically started pulling in content from the other video file, and it will just play it back. That piece in the middle isn't pretty. It's not like a nice, elegant fade like you'd get if you edited content on an Avid suite, did some kind of nice transition. It's kind of like it's playing the video and it switches. And there are times, we actually used it in that format for like Wimbledon, where we take like the 4 key plays of a game in order to show who won. And it would be playing through beautifully. It would hit this thing, and it was quite a jarring experience for the video just to flip, because you're not used to that when you're actually watching the content come back. There's a bunch of stuff that we're looking at potentially doing for London Olympics, where we are looking at whether or not we can actually do things like smooth transitions and those kind of things. So there's a bunch of new stuff that needs to get put into video editor in order to deal with that. The other thing it doesn't deal well with today is the other thing on Sunday Night Football. It doesn't deal with multiple video streams in a single video asset. So I have 5 different video tracks, and we think it would be really nice to actually be able to go in and splice and dice from the different video tracks. We can't do that today, but it's something we want to do in the future. The most important thing, though, for me is, and for the live events we do, there's no encoding. So, when we have an event that lasts an hour and the content's only valid for an hour, the fact that we can take a live clip and we can get that live clip up as a separate asset in 30 or 40 seconds means it still has value. If I've got to wait for someone to actually go back to their Avid suite, go and find the right point in the video, make their cut, and then pass that off, and it goes through an encoding farm somewhere, and I've got lots of people doing that, and that content comes, that content which was a clip that happened in the first half of the game comes out in the last 15 minutes. It's not relevant anymore. So, the nice thing for me is the video editor gives us the ability to get that content up and running very, very quickly. So let's go take a quick look at that. Okay. How are we doing for time? Getting close. Okay. So I'm going to keep this one fairly short. There's a bunch of information up on the website about Rough Cut Editor, but I'll try and keep this fairly brief and just show you roughly what the tool looks like. So again, I'm just going to go in. I'm going to create a new asset. I'm going to give it title. I think that's probably the only thing I need to give it. Yep. We're going to go ahead and save that. Again, I can't do anything with it until it's approved. So scroll down to the bottom. We go ahead and approve it. Okay. And now, when I go and click on this, you'll see I can launch Rough Cut Editor. And what Rough Cut Editor is going to do is actually just bring in all of the video assets associated with this project. A bunch of them on there aren't approved. These are the only 4 assets that were approved. And if the live asset was there, it would have also thrown the live asset into here. I can then go take these various assets. I can add them to what's called the media bin. And when I go to the media bin, I can actually go ahead and preview these and watch them. I can drag them down onto a timeline. And the timeline is really, really, really big, so I can never find them. Okay, let's drag one down now. I might be able to see it. There it is. I told you timeline's huge, and these ads are really small. So I can actually just go in and I can take, like 2 ads, and I can drop them in. Oops, not on top of each other, next to each other. Again, that was really, really small. Okay, scroll that out. And I can do things like, I can link them together, and I can lock them. So I can basically go in and, say I wanted to take a highlight, which was a touchdown. I can go take the touchdown. I could throw a pre-roll ad and a post-roll ad on it, and then I lock them all together, and then I just publish that as a separate asset. What will happen then is it'll get dropped back into that watch folder, and Transfer Manager will populate all the information back into SharePoint for me, and then I just go through, I can do a quick QA on it and make sure everything's okay, go ahead and publish it, and then that content's available and it becomes another clip that's actually pushed out onto the player that everyone can go and see. Okay. And we'll skip over that. So finally, ad insertion. So I'm not going to go ahead and demo this. I'll just go ahead and talk about it. Since I don't have a live stream, it's kind of hard to add mid-rolls to it. So in terms of the smooth streaming video content, as I said, these things are described by what we call a manifest file. And the manifest file describes all of the video tracks and also the audio track. Most of the projects we work in, we also have another track in there, which is a data track. So for every 2 seconds, you have both video content and you have audio content every 2 seconds. And then we have this thing called a sparse track. And the sparse track doesn't have to have content every 2 seconds. Obviously, audio and video have to be perfectly contiguous, otherwise things go wrong. But for the sparse track, we can have an entry randomly. So I can have one at minute 15, I can have one at 2 minutes and 15. And we basically use those to insert markers that the player sees. And it's just an XML definition that we pass to it of a URL. So that gets passed across to the player. The player recognizes that and realizes this is where it's got to play an ad. So it reaches out to an ad server, and we'll pull down the ad content, and it'll actually switch from the live video it's doing to the ad that it needs to insert. And when it finishes, it'll actually gracefully switch back. What we do within Content Manager is we actually allow you the ability to go and specify which of those VOD assets that you imported are ads. And then we also allow you to go and create what we call ad pods. So an ad pod is a cluster of ads, normally 3 or 4, that make up an ad break, same as if you're watching TV. So you'll go in and you might have a Subway, a Lexus, and a Verizon ad, and that makes up a minute and 15 ad pod. So within Content Manager, we allow you to go and specify what those ad pods are. And then we allow you to go and say, when you create a live event, these are the ad pods that I want to play during this live event. And then we provide the operator with, jump over the tool, we allow the operator a tool that allows him to actually go and do that insertion. And what we're doing is we're actually just, the operator has a dashboard that looks something like this that basically shows him 2 video players. One of those video players is connected fairly close to real time on the publishing point, so he can see exactly what's coming out of the encoder. The other video window over on the far right-hand side is exactly what that standalone player would be doing. It's about 30 seconds behind live. And we have that natural delay in there that allows us to actually get the ad markers across the CDN in a timely fashion, that when the end user actually gets to that point in the video, the ad switch happens. So we need that delay in there in order for us to be able to do that. So this basically allows us to see, right now at the top I have the same grid control. It shows me there's 4 live events currently running. I'm connected to one of those live events. And then down here on the left-hand side, it actually tells me what ad breaks I'm going to insert in that. When I click on the Insert button, it's just going to go ahead and insert an entry into the sparse track for the manifest. That's eventually going to get replicated out to the player. The player is going to see that there's an ad opportunity there, and it's going to switch the video, play the ads. When it finishes, it's going to come back. So in terms of what all this stuff looks like and which pieces we've built and we're giving to you guys. So starting on the top right-hand side, obviously we've built this fairly rich media player that sits on top of Silverlight that allows you to do some of the, really amazing players we've built for things like Vancouver Olympics and Sunday Night Football. That's just a media player. You can take that. It's up on Coplex. You can pull it down. You can do anything you want with it. There's a few other players that we're looking at building to make life a little easier. I'm actually going to get a player built that works with Content Manager, so you can basically just throw that up on another site, and Content Manager will automatically replicate all the XML information through to it, which is how we tell it that there's live events available and there's on-demand events available. So I'm hoping to have that out probably within the first couple of months of next fiscal year, which is through July, probably around August, September timeframe. All of the stuff that runs on top of SharePoint, as I said, we've bundled all this stuff up. It's called Content Manager. It's going to be up on the Microsoft Download Center, hopefully within the week. And what that allows you to do is go and create these sites, which are definitions of projects, to actually manage all the video assets associated with them. And then we have things like the live dashboard for managing the live events, which is a plug-in Silverlight control that runs on top of SharePoint. There's the ad insertion tool that runs on top of SharePoint. Again, another Silverlight control. There's the media viewer, which is just an instance of the media player, which runs there. All of the definitions for both the workflows to allow you to have the approval process. And then for publishing, we actually just publish out XML documents. So you can go into an asset library and you can say, okay, I want to categorize all these ads. These are all sales training ads. These are all sales training assets. These are all HR assets. And then we have a publishing feature that allows you just to publish an XML list of that content. So you have a separate standalone player. We have another system you need to be able to distribute that content to. You can do it by just pushing an XML document. We built the web services to pull all this stuff together. So we built the tasks that go into Transfer Manager. We built the web services to talk to the encoders, both expression encoder and to the inlet encoders. the video editor, which again is available separate. So you can actually go up to Coplex and download that today. If you have an existing CMS system and you want to take that rough cut editor or the Microsoft Media Platform video editor, you want to take that and integrate that with an existing content management system that you've got, you can just go ahead and take that code. We give that away. And then finally, the automation for the publishing points themselves. And again, that will be a separate component that you can actually pull out of the solution that we put up there. And obviously, all of our back-end services based around that. So in terms of the dependencies that we've built for SharePoint, for Content Manager, it needs IIS Media Services 4.0, which is the version that shipped probably around October last year. It needs IIS Media Services Beta, which was shipped Monday last week, SharePoint 2010, and Expression Encoder 4.0 SP1. SP1 is important. There's actually a fix in SP1 that allows us to make web services calls to it. If you try and do it with 4, it won't work. So in summary, we've built all this stuff on top of SharePoint. We thought that was a pretty logical place, especially for enterprises, to start looking at where they collect all the information associated with video. I'm a strong believer in not actually putting the video itself there because video files get kind of unwieldy. They bloat the database. They slow down the performance on SharePoint. So I think there's some good reasons to actually architecturally move the content off on separate servers. The Microsoft Media Platform that I talked about, which is our overall suite of offering, all of that information on that is up on that website, Microsoft.com, WAC Media Platform. And as soon as Content Manager is published, we'll actually push out an announcement up to that website to tell everyone that it's available and you can go download it. And as I said, the beta version of Transfer Manager is out there, and that's just a link to that. So I think I'm about 4.5 minutes shy of my end time. So questions. I know there was a couple coming up there. So can we actually walk up to the mic and ask the question, just so the questions get recorded for the video recording?
Where is it on? Where or when in the process does the video get associated, the video asset, which is a file on a file system, get associated with the list item in SharePoint?
Okay. So for an on-demand asset, when we go through that Transfer Manager process, we'll actually re-encode the content. We'll push it off to an origin server where it can actually be streamed. And then the last piece of that is to take all of the metadata associated with that, and we call in through a web service in SharePoint in order to populate everything into the list.
That includes the location?
Yeah.
The server and all that?
Yeah. All of that stuff just gets populated in there, and it knows where the video file is from that point forward.
So if you were going to change the location of that, you'd have to update your SharePoint lists?
Yes. You'd have to go in and physically edit that asset and change where the pointer to where the manifest is. And it's just a URL that points to where the manifest file is. And it's the same for live. When we go and create them, when we go through the process of creating that live event, when we start the publishing point, we'll actually put the URL for the publishing point in there for the live event. And then when we take a live event and we move that to be a VOD event, it goes back through Transfer Manager, and it's that process back through Transfer Manager that will update the pointer to where the VOD content is. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned something about the porting kits, but you didn't go into it too much. Are those available today? Are those planning to be available?
Okay.
When?
So the Smooth Streaming porting kit for iOS is available today for license, and I think. If you email sspkinfo, so it's sspkinfo at Microsoft.com, then those guys can give you some information on what their licensing terms are. Perfect. And if you have problems with that, my email is at the bottom of that. Feel free to put me on CC. And if you have any problems, I'll get you to the right guys. Okay, any more questions? No? Well, I'll probably be around on the Silverlight booth tomorrow. If anyone has any other questions or want to come and ask me, then feel free to come talk to me. So thanks for everyone's time today.